Good old 270 Winchester. It has been a workhorse in the game fields around the world for 95 years. But now, a couple of upstarts have come along to try to displace it. The 6.5 PRC and the 6.8 Western. Can they do it? Well, let's just find out on this episode of Ron Spomer Outdoors. Winchester released the 6.8 Western, its newest cartridge. Now, is this earth-shaking? Is this the latest and greatest? Is this finally the salvation of the 270 caliber? Or is it just another ho-hum right in the middle of the pack cartridge that we really don't need? So while I was researching the 6.8 versus the PRC 6.5, I found that the good old 270 Winchester might just hang in there, so I looked up some ballistics on it, and then I thought, well, wait a minute, what about the WSM? That 270 WSM, after all, is the parent cartridge of the 6.8 Western. And I think I've got one right here. Look at that. Looks fairly similar. They just shortened the shoulder, pushed it back a little bit, and then they put it in fast twist barrels so you can stabilize bullets up to 175 grains so far, and they may even come up with some longer ones. So what exactly does that do to improve the performance? We're going to look at those hard numbers here pretty quickly, but one of the advantages I think of the 6.8 Western, like the PRC, is that it's a short action, and for some reason shooters these days, especially young ones, have this notion that a short action cartridge is so much better than a long. And here's a long action cartridge right here. In fact, where's that 270? No, I don't have him out. This is a 280 Ackley improved. But that is the same length as the 30-06. That would be considered your long action or your standard length action. And yeah, you can get a lighter rifle with a little quicker bolt throw on it, so it cycles a bit faster, but for hunting, who cares? But some people really dote on that short action, and I think one of the things Winchester was doing when they made the 6.8 was catering to that. That's also why they called it the 6.8 instead of the 270 super short or something, because young people these days are really into the millimeter designation for their cartridges. So there it is. It's a 6.8, which is really a 270. Is it so much better than the old 270 Winchester or the newer 270 WSM? Does it do things that those two do not? This is where you might be surprised. But you'd also be surprised at how close that 6.5 PRC hangs in there. But one thing you probably won't be surprised about is the good old 6.5 Creedmoor has met its match, and then some. But you just look at it and you can tell it's not going to hang in there with these other guys. It's a great little cartridge for mild recoil, great deer cartridge, and obviously long-range shooting is its specialty. But that's mostly because of its high BC bullets. You can shoot those same bullets on this PRC, and it'll push them about 200 to 250 feet per second faster. So you get a little more recoil out of it. But for hunting, who cares? And maybe even for target shooting, who cares? Because you can use muzzle brakes and a heavy rifle and calm it right down. But there is that concern about burning out barrels. Now, a little aside about burning out barrels. Exactly what is it? A lot of people imagine that those bullets ripping down the rifling are wearing it out. It's not exactly what's happening. Barrels burn out from the flame when that cartridge ignites. So the cartridge is sitting in the chamber and boom, all of that powder turns to a gas at extremely high temperatures. And that then heats up the metal right in front of it at the lead that slides up into the rifling. And that hot area, if you continue to shoot and keep it really hot, will break down. Some of it's got to do with stretching. You know, you heat something and it expands and then it shrinks down when it cools, and you do that again and again, things are going to crack. And then there's a little bit of chemical composition going on in there that changes things and interacts with the steel and the different metallurgy that's in that steel. So there is where it breaks down, and it starts to look like a busted up old sidewalk. Some guys will say it's like alligator skin, and you can see it when you look into the bore scope. That's where your barrel starts to burn out. The bulk of that barrel might be fine. It's not like friction's wearing it out. But if the bullet hits that rough area and gets ripped and torn a little bit or destabilized, there goes your accuracy. For hunting, a burned out barrel can probably still be suitable for hunting for maybe twice its life for target shooting. So don't get too freaked out about barrel burnout. And the other thing I always say about barrel burnout is barrels are like truck tires. If you want to go fast, you got to get a good tire. And when that tire wears out, you buy some new ones. And you can do that with your barrels on your rifles. They're not cheap, but $300 to $500 is a lot cheaper than a whole new rifle. And the target shooters, even the 6.5 Creedmoors, they're switching out barrels sometimes as many as 4 a year. So don't get too freaked out about barrel. If you want a bullet for hunting that does what it's supposed to do, you've got to pay the price. And the price is not just the ammo in the rifle, but sometimes it's a new barrel. So do consider that. When I'm looking at that PRC and the 6.8 Western, looking really similar, but there's a little more powder capacity in this one. Is it going to burn your barrel out sooner? Well, maybe not, because the barrel's diameter is larger. And if you've got a larger diameter bullet, that balance between powder and bore size ameliorates the burnout. So it's not just all powder, it's got to do with the diameter of the bore as well. I would imagine these two are probably equal on barrel burnout potential because that difference is right there. So I don't have any hard numbers on that because obviously the 6.8 is just out and the PRC isn't all that old either, so who knows how long those barrels are going to last. But they're definitely going to burn out sooner than the Creedmoors. Other than that, I guess I could tell you about the water capacity and the volume in these powders. What I did was I poured water into an empty case on each of these. And the numbers I came up with bringing the water right up to the top of the neck, which isn't a real and accurate way to determine how much powder you're going to get in there, obviously, because a bullet fills that. But I couldn't precisely tell where my water level was inside of that case, so I just filled it to the top. And the PRC held 67 grains of water, and the 6.8 Western had 74.7 grains. So there's quite a bit more. There's about 7 grains more capacity. Get rid of the neck, and who knows what you've got left. Well, then I decided to do it with powder, and I put in a ball powder, and it was US 869, a slow-burning ball powder, and the PRC held 72.8 grains, and this 6.8 Western, believe it or not, held 80.1 grains. So again, that's clear up to the top of the neck, right up to the mouth of the cartridge. So obviously we're looking at probably 6, 7, 7.5 grains more powder potential inside of this 270, the 6.8. So that's going to give it a little bit boost and handle those heavier bullets, which is a good thing because you can push up to a 175 grain bullet in that 6.8 right now, and who knows, down the road they may come up with some slightly heavier and slightly longer ones. So let's go to our famous tail of the tape now and just see how this 6.8 handles the ballistics compared to a lot of our other popular deer and elk cartridges. All right, here we are with the tail of the tape. I've decorated the tape a little bit with some of the cartridges we're going to be talking about. But look at those numbers and tell me you're not surprised at how consistent they are. This, I think, is what a lot of hunters don't realize. We make such a fuss over this cartridge versus that and how much better one is than the other. And when you look at the actual numbers, they're really similar, especially at 250 yards. Look at the drops. They're all going to be 0, obviously, because that's where we zeroed the rifle. But when you get out to 500 yards, you start to notice the difference. And it's not much. Obviously, that little Creedmoor is going to be the weakest one. It's going to drop the most. But once you get into the 270 Winchester and on down the line, look at how close those are. Obviously, the WSM 270, pushing the same bullet as the regular 270, drops less, 6 inches, and less wind deflection because of the velocity increase. And of course, it has more energy once it gets there. That's why they make magnums. Now the PRC hangs right in there. Not as good as a WSM, but it doesn't recoil as much as well. So I don't think any elk is going to complain about getting hit by 1622 foot-pounds versus 1916. But if you do, there's a good way to make a decision. So how is that 6.8 Western hanging in there? Look at the numbers. It's got more energy than the PRC,
but a little bit less than the WSM, even though the WSM is shooting a lighter bullet. So there's going to be a shocker for a lot of people, I think. Now, the 175 you would think would have more energy at 500 yards, but look at that. It does not. The 270 WSM is actually putting out more energy at 500 yards. So, eye-opener for some of us was for me. Go on down the line now, I threw the 280 AI in because a lot of people asked me to. They were pretty sharp and they figured, that's not too far off from what that AI is doing. 175 grain bullet in each of them. This is a long skinny cartridge. It's right here. Obviously, this is the fat one from Winchester for the 6.8. So you're getting your powder two different ways, but they're fairly similar. Look at the velocities. 2800, 2830, 175 grain bullets. Look at the differences. Not a lot. Those two are just running neck and neck. So for fun and games, I threw a 300 Win Mag in because a lot of folks are going to figure, well, that's a big 300. My gosh, that's going to wipe everybody else out. And it's got a lot of powder in it. And of course, it pushes that big 180 grain bullet that fast. What difference does it make? Well, not a lot on the 250 yard, but out here, it actually drifts more than the 280 AI, the 6.8 Western. It's got the worst deflection. What's going on with that deflection problem with such a fast bullet? Right there. Ballistic's coefficient is pretty weak. The stodgier bullets just can't resist the drag, so they slow down more, and that's why they drop and drift, especially drift. And they're going to lose some energy too, but still, there's a lot of energy to start with, and it holds onto it pretty well. Now, step up to a better, more efficient bullet with that 597 BC on a 190 grain bullet. You're going to slow it down a little bit, but the result is more energy downrange, a lot less wind deflection, a little bit less drop. That's probably the load you would want to go to. So study that chart and you will see that the 6.8 Western, while it's a nice way to enhance a 270's performance with heavier bullets, it's not knocking it out of the park. You could make a strong argument for the 6.5 PRC or the standard 270 WSM. And if you had a good old 270 Winchester, I really don't think you've got too much to complain about. Look at the differences. The best one here, 31 inches of drop, and the old one, only 2 inches difference at 500 yards. If you're like most hunters, you rarely shoot past 300 yards, let alone 5. And as you can see with the 250 numbers, it's not worth even bothering. But if you don't own a rifle and you're looking for one, I gotta say that these short action fat cartridges with the high twist rates and the heavy long bullets are the wave of the future. And just because you buy this one right now that only has 165 grain bullets and up to 175, you can look for lighter bullets coming down the pike. In fact, I heard Winchester is already working on 160 grain, and there's no reason why a hand loader couldn't put 150s in it or even 130s. I'm pretty sure they would stabilize just fine in there. So you've got a lot of options with that Western that you don't get with the standard 270 and WSM just because of the twist rates. But if you're kind of a custom builder or you've got a good gunsmith who can put a barrel on for you, you could just get a barrel with faster twist rates and chamber it for 270 or 270 WSM. So look at the numbers and make up your own mind. The important thing to notice, of course, is that there's not all that much difference between these. They're really pretty similar. And what our manufacturers are doing, like so many people said and they complained about, is that they're trying to get your business. Well, of course they're trying to get your business. That's why they're out there. And I always tell people who complain about that, they're just trying to take your money. Well, that's why they're in business, is to stay in business. I don't want our gun and ammo makers to go out of business. They can't keep up with ammo demand the way it is. So I sure as heck don't want them to go out of business because people are getting bored with the old cartridges and just using grandpa's rifle and not bothering to buy new stuff. So it's like any other manufactured good. You've got to stir the pot, keep the excitement level up so that people keep buying, trying new things. And, if you're an aficionado of shooting and ballistics and all the rest, you want to try the new stuff and see if you can't just find the ultimate load for your style of hunting. Now, before we sign off, I've got to flip this page over because I've got something cool on the backside. I'm going to max out the 6.5 and the 6.8, and we're going to see just what they're capable of doing. Let me straighten this out, and I'll get right back to you. Okay, head to head. the 6.5 PRC on the left versus a 6.8 Western on the right. Before we dive into the numbers, look up here at the water capacity and the powder capacity. I quoted those earlier. There are the numbers for you to study. Now, what I did was I picked the highest BC bullet I could find for each of these. There may be some higher ones out there, but this is the Berger EOL 156 grain bullet. Loading data is a little bit scarce on that right now, but I extrapolated and came up with probably a little good, I don't know if I'm being generous or not, but 2850 feet per second with that bullet seems to me like it's pretty generous. There are some people who are going to claim they can get another 100 feet per second out of it, or maybe even 200, but there are always folks out there who are pushing the envelope, and I'm not going to suggest that anybody do that and blow up their gun and their hand in the process. So keeping it safe, I think we could probably pick up that much muzzle velocity. With the Western and 170 grain, we know what we can do there because I have shot some 170 grain bullets, not the Berger EOL, but a Nas or a ballistic tip. And I got that velocity. So we know we can do that. So here are, look at those BCs. Just a tiny difference between the two. A little more velocity here, but look at how similar they are out to 1,000 yards. Now this is where some long-range shooters might be interested. The extreme range shooters are going to be saying, well, now wait a minute. They're not so concerned about energy as they are getting there. And if they can reduce the wind deflection, it's to their benefit. You're going to gain an inch here with the 6.8 Western and a little less drop, almost 10 and 11 inches. They can compensate for drop with a good ballistics program and dialing their scopes. They got a rangefinder. They know exactly where they are, so they don't worry too much about that. So if you're thinking of entertaining some long-range shooting and you're looking for a little bit of an advantage, I think you'll get it from that 6.8 Western.
Well, there it is, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. At least based on the calculator I use to figure out all these numbers. But, this is the way we need to look at our cartridges when we're deciding. It doesn't matter what Grandpa said or Dad said or your best friend said about what a super cartridge he has. It's basic physics. It's just gunpowder that turns into a gas and creates a pressure inside of a chamber, and out the barrel goes the bullet, and then at that point it's the weight of the bullet and the shape of the bullet, its ballistics coefficient, and that's going to determine what happens downrange. So it really pays to study ballistic tables and figure out exactly what your cartridges are doing for you. Then you can start thinking about barrel length that's required and the recoil you're going to suffer and the cost of the cartridge and the powder that you're burning and the availability of the bullets and all sorts of things that are secondary to figuring out the actual ballistics performance. And once that's done and you determine the kind of hunting you do and where you do it, you can make an informed decision about the perfect rifle for you. And obviously, if you're a serious target shooter, you probably already know more about this than I do, and you've got your decisions pretty well in hand. But if you're just getting into the game, again, study it. You just need to know what is going on out there. It's a combination of the cartridge, the bullet, the rifle, and you put them all together in a perfect package. And if you really are high on that cartridge, again, I've said it before and I will always say it, the person who has faith and loves his cartridge and rifle is the person who's going to shoot the best. That's going to be the ticket. You've just got to have your pet, whether it's a 270 WSM or the 6.8 Western or a 6.5 PRC or the good old 270 Winchester. It's not so much the cartridge itself, it's the whole package and the man or the woman behind the gun. Beware the woman with one rifle, she probably knows how to use it. So, this is Ron Spomer once again thanking you for watching and inviting you to subscribe to our channel so we can continue to make gun and ammo and ballistics videos like this. I would invite you to join our Patreon community and support us there. That really helps. Our patrons are doing just a wonderful job of supporting us, and we have some interesting discussions, and I answer their questions as well. So you can get a little bit of advice there for what it's worth. And you can always find us a little bit on Instagram and Facebook as well. So thanks for tuning in. Ron Spomer signing out as usual with Hunt Honest and Shoot Straight.